Welcome to the Lord of the Rings Lorecast, the show that explores the background of Tolkien's amazing world from the very beginning. Welcome back to the Lord of the Rings Lorecast. It has been a while since we've talked about The Hobbit. It's over a month and a half now. And I'm glad that we were able to talk about the Rings of Power because the second season definitely improved on the first. And if you listen through those episodes, you heard my critiques and my enthusiasm for different parts. And I love the conversation that we've got going on around it in the Discord and on the Patreon episodes. And thank you for going through that with me because it's a once in a 2-year thing. So I figured it was worth taking time out this time to go through that. But we are back to discussing The Hobbit. This will be the 12th episode on The Hobbit. And in order to get you back up to speed, the dwarves and Gandalf and Bilbo are in Rivendell. And they are talking with Elrond. And this is the first time in this story that we get a close-up view of an elf, somebody actually having conversations with one. And we start to get to know a little bit about Elrond and his knowledge, his history, his understanding of things. And you have to remember, as we go through this, that this book, The Hobbit, There and Back Again, wasn't always going to be part of the Legendarium. At first, it was a one-off story, and we've talked about this. And there are little, I guess you could call them vestigial pieces of text that either make that kind of obvious or point to a different reason why this story was to begin with. And we're going to get to that as we get through here. And this is not going to be the most adventurous episode, but it is an episode that is going to be linking together the end of the chapter we're currently on with the beginning of the next chapter. So we will be wrapping up chapter 3 and entering chapter 4. So without further ado, let's get into it. So we left off last time, and Elrond was asking the dwarves to show him the map. He picks it up and he takes a look at it, and he notices that this isn't just any regular map. There is hidden text here. Moon letters. What are moon letters? Asked the Hobbit, full of excitement. He loved maps, it tells us here, and then goes on to talk about his handwriting and how his was a little bit thin and spidery. And Elrond responds. He says, moon letters are rune letters, but you cannot see them. And I love this description because right off the bat, especially those of us who are reading The Hobbit for the first time and do not know anything else about anything else in this world at all, it's like, okay, well, that didn't really answer the question. Then what's a rune letter? He goes on and says, not when you look straight at them. You can't see them when you look straight at them. They can only be seen when the moon shines behind them. So let's pause right here because there's more to this, but you'll probably have noticed that what Elrond is talking about here is the moon letters specifically on this map, a piece of parchment or paper or something thin enough that the light could shine through it. He's not talking about moon letters that would be, say, carved into stone because you couldn't actually see through the stone, right? So in this case, these moon letters, which are rune letters, have to have the moon shining behind them. And he goes on and he says, what is more, with the more cunning sort, it must be a moon of the same shape and season as the day when they were written. Now, this is a very specific thing. It's not just the same shaped moon. Oh, it's a half moon. It's a full moon. It's a new moon. It's a waning crescent, something like that. This means that it has to both be the right shape and the right season as the day when they were written. But there's more to this. He goes on. The dwarves invented them, and I love that he gives the dwarves credit here. Elrond is not about inflating the elves to take on things that they think they have credit for, but they don't really, or anything like that. He's actually just honestly conveying the information as it is. And so he's giving the dwarves credit. And wrote them with silver pens. As your friends could tell you, these must have been written on a midsummer's eve in a crescent moon a long while ago. Now notice, there is a difference here between a general season as the day when this was written and this specific day. Midsummer's Eve is one day. It's not a season. It is one day. So is he insinuating here that this is an even more cunning type of magic that was used to make these moon runes? Because if it was just happened to be the day before or the day after or a different day in midsummer at some point, then it wouldn't have revealed. Gandalf responds. He says, "What do they say?" Actually, Gandalf and Thorin say this together, which I find interesting because they both are interested in this. And then we get the ending of the sentence, which says, "A bit vexed, perhaps, that Elrond should have found this out first." And I feel like that applies more to Thorin with the whole competition between the dwarves and the elves sort of thing, and not so much on Gandalf, although it's part of the same sentence. Though really, there had not been a chance before, and there would not have been another until goodness knows when. So the narrator is clarifying that although they feel this way, they wouldn't have had an opportunity. Elrond wouldn't have been able to read this earlier than this or after this because of this very specific way that these moon runes work. Or moon letters. I called them moon runes. I'm going to leave that in there. They're moon runes. It's got a little bit of a rhyme to it. All right. So the actual letters tell us this is the riddle we get here. And notice we aren't yet at the part of the book where Bilbo and Gollum have riddles, but riddles already exist. This one says, "Stand by the gray stone when the thrush knocks, and the setting sun with the last light of Durin's day will shine upon the keyhole." Now, this isn't a riddle in a traditional sense of the way that riddles are used, especially later on in the book. But it also isn't the most clear set of instructions. So there is a little bit of a, hey, you got to solve what this actually means kind of thing going on here, especially from the perspective that they're reading it now. Think about it like this. They are not yet at the mountain. They are not yet standing next to any gray stone. They have no idea which gray stone this is referring to. If this is supposed to be a literal gray stone, or if a gray stone is a title for something and that they need to be aware of that. They don't know about that. They also don't know about the thrush. A thrush is a type of bird. It's a small bird. The thrush knocks. It would be pecking at something, so that would mean the thrush knocking. But what thrush? They haven't met a thrush. Is there a thrush they're supposed to go get somewhere? Are they just supposed to be looking out for them at some point in their future? And then on top of it, all of this has to happen if they're standing in this right place when a thrush shows up and knocks on the rocks, when the last light of the setting sun of Durin's day shines, it will shine on the keyhole. These are very vague and yet at the same time predictive of the future in a very specific yet not particularly detailed sort of way. You can see how that would be confusing. And like so many of Tolkien's other works and writings, there's echoes of this sort of thing in mythology. The kinds of riddles, the kinds of foresight that gets told to, say, Greek heroes or in Nordic tales. This is a very common sort of foreshadowing / riddle / thing that the hero needs to know and figure out in order to achieve their goal. And then we get this section, and this section hits me as one of those moments where the characters say things in order to fill in the gaps for the audience, because the characters probably should know these things, but they don't need to detail them in so much detail or ask the questions that they're asking because they would just know the answers. Durin, says Thorin, he was the father of the fathers of the eldest race of dwarves, the Longbeards, and my first ancestor. I am his heir. Notice he calls the Longbeards the eldest race of dwarves. technically, that's right. The Longbeards descended from Durin, and Durin was the first of the 7 dwarven kings that was crafted by Aule. So, yeah, he's right, and I would imagine a dwarf would be proud of that fact. But that's like, I don't know, it's like being born a twin or a triplet, and you just happen to be the first one that was birthed out, and the other ones came right after you, and being like, I'm the eldest, when technically you're all exactly the same age. Sort of like that. I mean, I guess it depends on, is the age measured from conception or is the age measured from actual birth? Let's not get into those details. But this is kind of similar to that, right? Like these ancient dwarves, this is the oldest one. I'm the heir. There's a certain amount of pride that sits in there. But then Elrond responds and he says, then what is Durin's Day? I would imagine Elrond, with all of his vast wealth of knowledge and books and friendship with the dwarves, would know what Durin's Day is. It would be like having a friend who happens to be of a different faith and then not knowing what one of their 3 most prominent holidays in the year is. If you're friends with that person, you probably would have heard them talk about that at some point. But here we are. And clearly this is in order to fill things in for the audience. Thorin responds, the first day of the dwarves' new year. So it's like a New Year's festival, which would make sense, Durin being the first of the dwarves, initiating the lifespan, the existence of them as a race. It's kind of like the beginning of a year, the beginning of a day. It's the beginning of a cycle. And so to equate Durin's Day with the beginning of the year makes sense. He goes on and says, as all should know, the first day of the last moon of autumn on the threshold of winter. We still call it Durin's Day when the last moon of autumn and the sun are in the sky together, but this will not help us much, I fear, for it passes our skill in these days to guess when such a time will come again. So he's basically zeroing in on all of these little details happening at the same time and how that's hard to predict. But we get a sense of this. We get a sense that Durin's Day is at the end of autumn, right before winter. The dwarves' year begins with the onset of the season of winter, which is different from our own calendars. Our years begin in January. According to our own calendars, the last day of fall, the end of autumn, is November 30th. Now, according to this, Durin's Day depends also on the moon cycle, and so we can't definitively say November 30th is always Durin's Day. It could be, but it also could be a different day that's in that same period of time at the end of autumn, and it's the first day of the last moon of autumn, which, as you can tell, would be hard to predict, right? It depends on the moon cycles and all of that. And then Gandalf pipes in and says, that remains to be seen. Is there any more writing? He's checking in just to make sure there's nothing else that was missed or left out. Elrond responds, none to be seen by this moon. Now notice he says, none to be seen by this moon. He doesn't rule out the fact that if there are other moon letters on this map that were written on a different date, that he can't see them right now. That there could be more information here. He just doesn't have it available right at the moment. So he gives back the map, and they go down to the water, and they see elves dance and sing upon Midsummer's Eve. Now this gives us a sense. They are at Midsummer's Eve, the day before Midsummer. They have until Durin's Day to get to whatever location this is, which, if you've, of course, spoilers, if you've read the story or watched the movies, it's up on top of the side of the mountain. It's like the side entrance, but they don't know that yet. It's fair to assume that this is pointing at a door that leads into the mountain. They just don't know if it's that side passage or where specifically on the mountain. So what they have here by this text on this map is a day, a rough set of days where they want to be in position because they can't really figure out, as Thorin put it here, what exact day the moon would be at that beginning of a new moon at the end of autumn. So they have kind of a general time frame of roughly when they need to be where they're going, and they know where they're going. and then the things that they need to look for when they get there. But it still is not the most obvious thing. And then this chapter concludes, and it says that they head off, and the morning's fair and fresh. The sky is blue. There's not a cloud. The sun is dancing on the water, and they head off ready for adventure. So their time here in Rivendell has revitalized them, has given them some new focus, has provided safety. It's done the exact thing that Elrond designed this place to do. Safety, education, and revitalization. And so they feel fresh and they head out. And now they're heading toward the mountains. But first, we have to go thank our patrons, so don't go anywhere. I'll be right back. It's time for that spring reset. I'm taking a look at everything in my closet and figuring out that, oh no, this absolutely needs to go. And it's about time I replace things so that my clothes aren't older than my 15-year-old. Now you might think that they lasted that long because they were well made, but no, they're in terrible condition. Unlike the new jeans I just got from Quince. Jeans have always been my personal go-to because you can kind of wear them for lots of different things, but maybe they're not your thing. Maybe you're looking for, 100% European linen with insanely soft flow knit activewear fabric. It's definitely getting warmer, and their flow knit activewear is moisture wicking, anti-odor, and soft enough that you'll actually want to wear it every day. So pick out what you want. You can't go wrong because they have prices 50 to 60% less than similar brands. And like I said before, they are high quality. I continue to wear their clothes all the time, and I know that these new jeans are going to last me a lot better than the other things in my wardrobe. And on top of it, they look great. They're so comfortable. And I spent just as much on the jeans that I am now cleaning out of my wardrobe. So if you're looking for something better, just all around better, go check out Quince. So go do it right now. Refresh your wardrobe with Quince. Go to quince.com/ringslore for free shipping and 365-day returns. Now available in Canada too. Go to quince.com/ringslore for free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/ringslore. So first of all, thank you so much to everybody for your patience and all of your well wishes, your kind words. I have just survived a second hurricane. I live in Florida. The first one hit up in the Panhandle, kind of in the bend of Florida, which is not where I live, but we definitely felt some effects of it as it went by. And this one that hit last week, at certain points, I mean, it kept changing. Of course, the hurricane track always changes, but there were points within like the last few days where it was like, oh, that very much could go right over my house. So we did what we needed to do. I tried to update everybody, and just so that you know in the future, if I'm missing an episode, check the Patreon, and this is available for even non-members. If you go to the Patreon, there's messaging there. I will always message on that. I will always message on Discord, and I will also put things on social media where I can. And basically, it got to the point where we were like, okay, we can ride this out. We've got shutters on our windows. Our house is kind of a newer build. It has shutters that are built in. We can kind of lock the place down. We have a generator, but living through the storm, especially with so many tornadoes and things like that, is absolutely scary. And fortunately, my wife's aunt and her husband had a place for us to stay that was far enough off the main path of the storm that we felt safe going there. It wasn't too long of a drive. And so we just kind of bunkered down there for a week, and helped with some other things. But it definitely was not a fun situation to be in. It took a number of days to get power back. We finally got back to the house over the weekend. We spent some time cleaning up, helping neighbors, doing a whole bunch of other stuff. And then finally this week started and I'm back at it again. So thank you for your patience. If it was up to me, these things wouldn't be problems, but it's not up to me. I don't control the weather. But I do control when I'm able to record this stuff, and that is because of all of you and all of your support. So thank you to everyone who supported the show and to the huge list of people who signed up in the last 2 weeks since I've been surviving. We've got a whole list here. We have Zenobia A., Aaron C., Dean H., Caroline R., Delph, Chris W.B., Bone Broth, Daniel C., Jed R, Megan, and Round Knight. Thank you so much for joining and signing up. I hope you're enjoying your ad-free episodes or your bonus episodes, any of the stuff that you're getting at the different tiers that you signed up at. And I have to shout out our VIP patrons because they get shout outs every week. AK Music Lover, Apollo, Aragorn III, Azel Razzle, Barney D, Bo, Brandy D, Cutter Metalworks, Daniel Nightweaver, David S, David M, Divine Madman, Fulcrum, Gerald CFC, Gimli a Break, Greg at Mordor's Carpentry, J-Dub, Gemma D, Jezer, Katie S, Capenna 009, Lori B, Mason Weathertop, Nick K, Nostrils of Sauron, Richard J, Rivqua, Rosie Rose, Sam B, Saruman the Stinky, TJT, and Tuerson of Hooer 97. Thank you so much to all of you. And in the meantime, we actually got a few more reviews that popped up too. If you'd like to help out and leave a review, that would be amazing. Apple Podcasts, the place to do it. I will read out the 5-star reviews over there. You can also rate the show on Spotify and other places. All of that is super helpful. This one came in from Canada, from I think it's the Phil TH3.F1L, who writes, "Everything makes sense now. I have not read the books, only watched the movies and the TV show. Robots makes it easy to understand the background of the characters and lands of Middle-earth. Keep it up. I'm excited to start on the Fallout podcast once I have caught up with this one. Tom's dedication to the craft is amazing and sets his podcast above all others." Well, thank you so much. That's so nice of you to say. And then this one from Pony00 in the United States, who writes, "My favorite podcast ever. I started this podcast to prepare myself to read the Silmarillion. Little did I know that the podcast host Tom would be so passionate about the Lord of the Rings and make it a zillion times better than I could have imagined." Well, thank you so much, Pony. And thank you everyone for supporting the show. Funny details about things moving on forward from this point. I don't expect any other hurricanes getting in the way, but I am heading out of town. I've got a trip to go on. My wife has a thing in Europe, a big event that she gets to go to as part of her job. And so I'm going to tag along. We're going to take a few extra days. We're going to see some places and I'm going to just kind of hang out while I'm over there. I will do my best. I'm going to bring a portable mic, like a lavalier mic and a laptop. I will do my best to record an episode while we are over there because I should have some time during the days. I hope it comes out. I hope the quality is good enough. It's going to be kind of a test for me to see if this is something I can make happen if I happen to be traveling and kind of keep things going. So the quality might be a little different next week, but hopefully there will still be an episode. So thank you everybody for your support. All right, let's get back to it. Here we go. So here's kind of a funny question as we start chapter 4. Chapter 4 is called Overhill and Underhill. Again, foreshadowing some stuff going on here. But here's the question. How many of you, like me, are old enough or have gone back or younger and have gone back to play some of the very, very difficult role-playing games from very early video game stuff? I'm talking like 70s, 80s, 90s, maybe even. And in those games, the difficulty was so high. I specifically remember, actually, I even remember this. I had a girlfriend in 9th grade who gave me a copy of the text-based DOS adventure for what I believe was The Return of the King. And I didn't play it very long. It was very difficult. It was the kind of thing where it would read out a bunch of text and then you'd have to put in an instruction like go north, pick up the sword, attack the orc, that kind of thing. It was very, very hard. And in those old style games, if it was text-based or graphics-based, it didn't really matter. So much of the options that you had would lead to your certain doom. And this was for a number of reasons. A lot of video games were originally taking the design concept of coin operating machines, which were supposed to be difficult because they wanted to eat your coins and keep you playing. But when it came to home technology, like playing games on your PC or your Atari or your NES or something like that, it didn't need to be as grueling, and designers eventually learned that. But I don't think that was the only reason why these stories were so grueling. There is a long background, a long ancestry of RPG games, role-playing games, fantasy adventures, and the way that those, not just in the video game space, date back all the way to The Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit. There are things that you can read in The Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit that became design features of things like Dungeons and Dragons, which then became design features of role-playing games after that. And this first paragraph in chapter 4 makes me think exactly of that sort of thing. It says here, there were many paths that led up into those mountains and many passes over them. So lots of options. But most of the paths were cheats and deceptions and led nowhere or to bad ends. And most of the passes were infested by evil things and dreadful dangers. This feels like a design doc for one of those old role-playing games. You've got all these options to get over the mountain, but the person making that decision doesn't know where each of those is going to lead. Most of them don't lead anywhere. Many of them lead to danger or evil creatures. This feels like the way those games would have worked. It goes on and says, the dwarves in The Hobbit, helped by the wise advice of Elrond and the knowledge and memory of Gandalf, took the right road to the right path. Now, this is a fun topic. I'm not going to go into this anymore on this episode, but as we continue through this story, think about the things that show up that not only reflect the inspiration behind Tolkien's work, the myths and the stories and the religious works and those kinds of things, but also the things that reflect those things into the future and then become part of the world that we engage with more today. Things like video games. It's pretty interesting. Just off the top of my head, we've got things like enchanted or magical items. You have the different kinds of abilities. You have the different kinds of characters and their professions or their expertise turning into character classes. There's a number of these things that turn into things that we are more familiar with today, and you can find the roots right here. So the next time you play a game and get like the super great sword of glowing fire, remember, there was probably something like that in one of these books that inspired it, and there absolutely is. So for the first time in a while, we get this description about how they're traveling through the difficulty of this land, climbing up these paths, and eventually looking back and seeing, laid out behind them, far below, the lands that they had left. It says, far, far away in the west, where things were blue and faint, Bilbo knew there lay his own country of safe and comfortable things, and his little hobbit hole. He shivered. It was getting bitter cold up here, and the wind came shrill among the rocks. We have another one of those moments where Bilbo is looking back, and he's seeing from a distance, or at least imagining he's seeing, this green land he came from, of safety and comfort. And that is one of the themes. This keeps happening to Bilbo, but it's not just the theme of his, well, Baggins versus Took side, but it also is confirmation that we are again moving out of the realms of safety, of the common world that you or I would be familiar with, into a land of danger, into the Fae. And it wasn't just dangerous because of the orcs or other evil creatures that were around. The landscape itself is dangerous here. Boulders, too, at times came galloping down the mountainsides, let loose by midday sun upon the snow, and passed among them, which was lucky, or over their heads, which was alarming. The nights were comfortless and chill, and they did not dare to sing or talk too loud, for the echoes were uncanny, and the silence seemed to dislike being broken, except by the noise of water, and the wail of wind, and the crack of stone. It's as if you are not one of those features, if you are not one of those sounds, then you are foreign here, and you are not welcome. The landscape itself is telling them to turn back. And sure enough, at this very moment, Bilbo's thoughts are also turning back. He starts lamenting the fact that he's missing out on summer. He thinks to himself, the summer is getting on down below, and haymaking is going on, and picnics. They will be harvesting and blackberrying before we even begin to go down the other side at this rate. He's not only lamenting that he's missing out on these features of the summer, but that it's going to take so long to get through this terrible place that summer might already be over by that point. And then we're reminded that the others were thinking equally gloomy thoughts. And we're reminded about how their mood has changed so quickly from the hope that they had when leaving Elrond's influence to the situation they're in now. In fact, this piece is particularly interesting. And perhaps it will be Durin's day, they had said. Only Gandalf had shaken his head and said nothing. Dwarves had not passed that way for many years, but Gandalf had, and he knew how evil and danger had grown and thrived in the wild since the dragons had driven men from the lands, and the goblins had spread in secret after the Battle of the Mines of Moria. Notice the reference here to the Battle of the Mines of Moria. Even the good plans of wise wizards like Gandalf and of good friends like Elrond go astray sometimes when you are off on dangerous adventures over the edge of the wild, and that is capitalized, the edge of the wild, as if it's an official place. And Gandalf was a wise enough wizard to know it. Even Gandalf in this situation knows that he cannot predict the future, and that hoping that their journey will be fast enough in order to get to a specific location on a specific day is very hopeful thinking. The world is dark and dangerous. These mountains even more so. And what we're seeing here is a disconnect between the, let's just call it ignorance. It's not being dumb or misinformed. It's just a lack of information on the part of the dwarves compared to the amount of knowledge that Gandalf has. And maybe it's a good thing. Maybe if Thorin and company knew the likelihood that they would make it through this on time or at all, they wouldn't have even tried. So even Gandalf is concerned, but he doesn't share it with the others because he knows their journey is too important. They have to press on. Thanks for listening to the Lord of the Rings Lorecast. If you'd like to learn more about other fantasy worlds, check out my other podcasts, The Elder Scrolls Lorecast, The Witcher Lorecast, and more at robotsradio.net. If you'd like to reach out, I'd love to hear from you. Send me a note on Twitter at robots_radio, or join our amazing community on the Robots Radio Discord. There are links in the show notes, or just search Robots Radio Discord, or find the link on robotsradio.net. I'll see you next time.